It's Saturday, my friends. We're talking short stories. Yeah, and this one's going to be a doozy because it's a first time author for me. Yes, Joyce Carol Oates. Never read anything from her. And yeah, I ended up reading the whole dang collection. The collection is Where Is Here? And we're going to talk about it. And I am very anxious about this because, yeah, this seems to be a collection, and I've read something that is just a little more profound than I guess I'm able to interpret. But before I get ahead of myself, let's dive right in and first talk about some author insights because you might be saying, who the heck is Joyce Carol Oates? I certainly was until I picked up this wonderful first edition. But yeah, who is this lady? So, Joyce Carol Oates, born in 1938 in Lockport, New York. She published her first novel in 1963. She has written over 58 novels, numerous essays, short stories that, rumor has it, range from the hundreds to the thousands, poetry, and plays. She is active on Twitter, now known as X, even still today, which I thought that was interesting. She taught creative writing at Princeton University from 1978 to 2014, and she was a visiting professor at UC Berkeley from 2016 to 2020. She would taught short fiction there. She has an absolute laundry list of awards that she has won for her writing. Too many to list here, but I will say the ones that caught my eye the most was she is a 4-time finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. Yes. Her writing style ranges. It's minimalistic, it's realism novels, gothic, horror-tinged, crime, children's fiction, detective fiction under various pseudonyms. Yeah, I really haven't uncovered all of her catalog just yet, but I have been going down the Joyce Carol Oates rabbit hole online. But yeah, she is a well-written woman. She also has dabbled in editorial and publishing as a co-founder with her husband of the Ontario Review, a literary magazine and small press. But yeah, that is a kind of an elevator pitch of Joyce Carol Oates. So let's dive right in and talk about this collection. So as I mentioned, there is 35 short stories in this thing. 35. And I read them all. Some of them, again, are like a page. Some of them read like poetry. And some of them are very ambiguous. And we're going to talk about that as well. But the first one that I enjoyed, I have 5 favorites that I picked out as the ones that I really kind of connected with. The first one is titled The Ice Pick. And just to kind of a brief summary here is you have a man who believes his wife is cheating on him. He starts leaving his job early and then doesn't even go into his job at all as he's chasing after and stalking his wife as she goes out to do daily tasks. What he finds on his third or fourth attempt at this is he finds his wife getting a flower and taking a stroll in town with a man that is obviously not him. And his wife seems always put together in her finest when she's out running errands where he's supposed to be at work. And when she gets home, though, she's in her normal house clothes and kind of all undone, and her hair's not put together, and she seems her normal kind of disheveled self. And so this leads the man to believe that she's trying to pull wool over his eyes, and he becomes even more enraged. But yet he has this love for his wife and a lot of uncertainty. But he is a drinker, and a very violent twist happens at the end of the story. And so I really liked that one. The next one I liked was titled Sweet. And this one was interesting because it was kind of, I think, the first short story I read from Oates where I got the point of view of a young adolescent boy. This young boy's name is Thad, and he's spending his young adolescence time, as most young men find, as they're going through puberty and changes in their body. They start viewing the world, and especially the females, in a different light. And Thad has kind of gotten into this voyeur kind of personality, and there is an apartment complex across the street from where he lives, and he has been watching this woman but through the blinds and behind the shears and everything else. And he starts getting more embrazened and emboldened to actually go over and try to meet this older woman. And then he gets even more testosterone filled, emboldened to actually go into her house when she's unawares. And so this kind of coming of age story where you get this from the boy's perspective is really, really interesting. The next short story is titled Transfigured Night, and I really like this one. A husband and wife of 19 years are at a kind of a black tie affair. There's an orchestra performance and one of a famous composer. The husband abruptly gets up and tells the wife, "I'm leaving. You can either come with me now or you can catch a taxi." The wife's like, "Well, the first intermission is just a little bit away." And he's like, "I'm leaving now." And the wife is at first pretty taken aback by the husband's kind of brutal honesty and putting her in that spot. She starts thinking in her mind, like, I've never been talked to that way from him in 19 years. When the first act finally concludes and the husband is not back, the wife gets up and then during the intermission starts looking for the husband and she doesn't find him. And then she goes outside thinking, well, he's got to be outside waiting for me in the car. He's not there. And so as the woman gets madder, she starts kind of going through the steps of grief and anger and betrayal. And she's going to walk home. It's only like 4 miles. Even though it's raining and cold and she has high heels on, she cannot believe her husband has put her in this position. And what kind of ends up happening is she meets a stranger, and then that stranger kind of helps her ascertain what is going on with her marriage in the course of the 19 years they've been married, with a very interesting twist that is kind of left ambiguously on purpose for you to determine what the true outcome of the story is. And I really like that. The next story I enjoyed was titled Shot. And this is about a young girl whose parents are very busy, have very demanding jobs, and they had recently moved to this subdivision. And the girl starts hearing at night this noise. And during the following day, she goes to investigate what this noise is about. She gets on her bike, takes off to where she believes the noise is coming from, and happens upon a dog that is chained very viciously to an outside stake in a very dilapidated property. And the dog is obviously neglected. The chain is digging into the dog, and the dog's bleeding, snarling, barking. And it's kind of a German shepherdish looking dog. And the girl catches the eye of the property's owner, which is a woman. And the woman comes out, and what appears to be kind of a sad state of affairs from the young girl's perspective is more a ghastly sinister than what it appears. And that's kind of that short story in a summary. And then the last one I really enjoyed was the title story from Where Is Here, titled Where Is Here. This one is interesting. It's definitely a dread tale. We have a family that gets a knock on their door right before they're about to sit down for supper. And they have been in this house for several years. And the man at the door is very kind and doesn't want to impose, but he asks the man who answers the door if he can look around the property because he used to be a young boy living in this home. And he happened to be there on a business trip and wanted to take the chance to see if he could look around and maybe kind of catch some of those old nostalgia kind of vibes. And so as he's doing so, the mom or the wife and the husband kind of get arguing because obviously this is imposing. Their 2 children are upstairs. They're getting ready to have supper. The woman thinks the man didn't handle it correctly. And then the woman opens the back door when the man is out in the backyard coming from the garage looking around and invites the man in. And that's when it gets even kind of weirder. And yeah, after all that takes place and the husband finally tells the guy it's time to leave, then the husband and wife have a fight, and I'm going to leave it at that. And those are my favorite short stories from this collection. So I want to talk a little bit about what I enjoyed from Joyce Carol Oates. The writing style it's kind of hard to pinpoint. If I had to take a ballparking here, and this is based on my limited reading experience, the one book that I've read over the course of the last maybe 5 years that I think closely kind of comes to the whimsical style, the prose, some of the economical writing, I would have to say is this. This is How You Lose a Time War, written by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. This one is another book that kind of left me in the same kind of headspace as this one. This one I didn't really understand or how I was reading it, but it stuck with me because it was written in such a profound way. This one is sticking with me kind of in a semi same way as that, because it's very interesting. Some of the stories I got, some of the stories I liked, some of the stories I didn't. They didn't really hit for me, and I felt like, okay, what did I just read? But yeah, another thing that I enjoyed from Carol Oates is the vast array of the human condition. She writes it very, very well, and she writes it from a varying number of perspectives. When I first started reading the first 4 or 5 short stories in here, I thought maybe that Oates was going to be one of those female authors that was going to write always directly or maybe hinted at that men are bad and females are the princesses and everything's fine and life would be so much better without men and blah, blah, blah. And that wasn't the case. And I'm glad that it wasn't, because she really opened my eyes about how she could write a human condition in a multitude of different characters. We have people in these short stories that she writes very well that are women that are being abused, marriage troubles, love, adolescent years, adults having overwhelming hometown nostalgia, domestic violence, first date jitters, redneck heroes, a prostitute. I mean, there's a lot of different topics and personalities and behaviors that she writes really, really well. In the short story, The Beauty Salon, she writes about a poor old guy that has never been in a beauty salon, always went to a barber, and he takes the chance to go in. And what you learn is that the guy's really there because he's needing a conversation. And he tries to spark up a conversation with the very young girl, and she's not really giving him the time of day. And he even hints at that he's scared to die. And that is just a human condition that you could so relate to when you see someone that maybe had lost their long time partner, and they're out and about, whether it's a salon or a library, and they're looking just for someone to talk to because they're trying to fill that void within their lives. And it was so profoundly done, but done in a story that's about a beauty salon. I thought that was really, really well done. Again, I read this whole thing, and I had no intention of doing so, but I just had to, because as I read stories, and some of them hit and some of them didn't, I got more and more of a sense of Oates as an author. I'm still kind of wondering if her full-length novels reflect some of the traits and personality and style that she did in this short story collection. I have a couple excerpts that really, really stood out that I want to share with you. The first was, they had been married for 25 years. They were not sentimental people. Sometimes they observed each other as if through the wrong end of a telescope. And the other one was, she wanted to hold on to the anger, to keep from feeling something else. I thought those were both really profound. They really kind of described a human condition feeling that just really stuck out with me. In terms of rating and overall, I mean, I give the book 4.2. I thought it was a mixed bag. Most collections are, but it's a really interesting kind of first foray into Joyce Carol Oates. Again, I'm eager to know if you've read Oates before, and if you have, can you give me a little bit of a stylistic opinion about her? I'm interested to see if the short stories translate in the same kind of style that she writes a full-length novel. Obviously, she's written over 50 of them. So I'm just interested. I find her writing very economical, very minimalistic in fashion. Yeah. And I think she's interesting. I like the variety here. Again, anyone that can write kind of realism when it comes to human psyche, behavior, emotions, it's very accessible, at least for me as a reader. In terms of who may like this, if you're a reader who enjoys compressed, intense fiction, you're interested in psychological, realism, you don't mind ambiguity in stories, especially the endings, this is for you. If you're a reader, though, who's very character driven, you like extended plots, you want neatly resolved endings, this is probably not your jam. But that is my take for this episode of Saturday Shorts. I hope I did this review justice. I was nervous about this one. I think it comes to when you read a book that sometimes maybe goes over your head a little bit, especially when it comes to varying stories, or you're trying something out that's for the first time a new author, and you were like, okay, is it just me, or is she always like this, or is he always like this? You have questions. I'm glad I reached out to both Pat and Steve, so thank you both for that. And if you haven't checked out the channel from Eric Carl Anderson, you definitely should. And thanks again. It's been another great episode of Saturday Shorts. I hope you're reading something well. Take care.